Today we have a crazy story of revenge of going out with somebody that someone's ex-husband admired. We'll get into that in a bit, but first, they wouldn't serve soft drink to a minor, so I let them waste 2 drinks. One day, my brother and I went to a beachside pub early in the day. It was literally just the 2 of us there. I was 18 and he was 14. I gave him some cash and asked him to grab us a couple of cans of Coke. The bartender huffed and said they don't serve minors and sent him away. So I then walk over and they have a smug look on their face while they crack open the 2 cans of Coke as I'm arriving at the bar. I then said, "I'll have 2 lemonades, thanks." The look, the questioning, the jaw drop, it was so satisfying. I mean, were they really getting a kick out of this, or were they just kind of doing their job and found the situation funny? I mean, if you live in a place where bars literally can't serve any drink no matter what to a minor, it kind of worked out as revenge, but they were just doing their job and assumed wrong. Quiet1232 commented, "Where I live, it's against the law to serve any drinks to a minor at a bar that serves alcohol, even water or soft drinks. Indeed, it is illegal for that minor to be within 2 meters, 6 feet of the bar. There are fines to the establishment as well as personally to the bartender themselves. The bar can even lose its operating license entirely depending on the circumstances. If similar consequences apply there, they weren't just being petty." Wonderful Wind 5736 added, "Holy freak, that was annoying in Vegas. I was 16 at the time and staying there with my parents for a few days before heading out to an extended outdoors tour. I couldn't even get a water in many tourist areas and nice restaurants serve alcohol, so dinner is now a problem. That was the true culture shock compared to me being able to buy non-distilled alcoholic beverages at home. Anyway, would rate Vegas 4 out of 10. Take a look once and then head out to the Grand Canyon or something. Also, hi, I'm Steven, and if you guys enjoy awesome stories of revenge, it would be amazing if you left a like or left a review if you're listening to my podcast. That said, our next story is Golf Course Sweet Revenge. This story takes place back in the late 70s when I worked on a golf course during my college days. My job was in the maintenance department mowing grass during the summer months. My first summer I was there, I spent most of my time mowing the rough. This involved mowing in and around a lot of trees, which sucks because you're constantly turning left or right, going forward or backing up. It kind of takes a toll on your body when you're doing this 8 hours a day. The good thing was that I mowed with a John Deere 420 with hydrostatic drive, which was a pretty nice garden tractor back then. So summer 2 comes along and I'm supposed to move up and get the more cake jobs like mowing the fairways and greens. So what happens? They hire one of the board members' kids and he ended up getting the fairways and greens and I'm still stuck in the trees. To throw more salt on the wound, I'm getting paid the same as I did the year before and he's making 75 cents an hour more than me. This is after I was told that there wasn't any money in the budget to give me a raise. Needless to say, I'm a little ticked off. So one day I'm out mowing the driving range and my engine starts to knock. Now, I've worked on enough engines to know that something is letting loose and that the engine needs to be immediately shut down. I'm still a bit butthurt after getting the shaft, so I throw the throttle to fuel bore and I continue mowing until the engine lets loose and a part of the connecting rod comes through the side of the engine block. So instead of a fairly inexpensive repair, they end up having to replace the engine. I got sweet revenge and they never knew the difference. I still chuckle to myself when I think back on this. I mean, I suppose it could come back to OP if they somehow found out that they were intentionally negligent with the machine, but realistically, how do you prove that? And also, realistically, is that a part of OP's job if they hear rattling to assume, time for maintenance, let's shut this down? Seriously ticked off commented, "Sweet revenge, but it does sound a bit risky. You might have been injured, no?" Our next story is Small Revenge. I've been at this place for about a year, wasn't paid for training, told I would be a manager and was lied to and strung along. Not because of my work ethic, but because they don't want to pay us. Been forced to perform shift lead duties despite not being shift lead and not being able to say no to my manager. The revenge is really small, but every time I eat my lunch, I throw my metal utensils away straight into the dumpster. Every single time. I also sometimes just throw away dirty utensils when I do dishes. I can just blame it on customers or servers. It's surely added up by now. I mean, morally, I definitely can't endorse what OP's doing here. I suppose if you don't get caught and it can't be traced back to you as far as why are all the silverware slowly disappearing, you can go for it, but I wouldn't advise this as a model to exactly look up to or try to replicate. TalonCard815 commented, "Not paying you for training and having you work outside your job title depending upon where you live, or both, illegal. The only reason a place like this gets away with things like this is because people don't know their rights. If you're in America, contact your local Department of Labor." This next story is, "Boss hates my music, so I only play Weezer." I'll start by saying I do actually like Weezer, just not as much as my boss seems to think I do. For context, I work mostly alone and he comes in randomly to cover my lunch or help with a small task. So I'm a huge progressive metal fan, and he said I could play anything on the speakers at work. I played instrumental metal until my boss said it was scaring the customers. He thinks Celtic music sounds demonic. This metal was really soft too. I tried other things like Minecraft OST, Dolly Parton, lo-fi as a genre, gay-sounding pop, and Weezer. He said he hated each of them for different reasons, like Dolly being too dramatic. At first, he was okay with Weezer, so I started to play it all the time while using my earbuds, so I didn't have to listen to Weezer for 7.5 hours straight. He started to complain that Weezer was making him feel old and I shouldn't play Island in the Sun on repeat. Hater. So anyways, it's been almost 2 years and I continue to play Weezer and say stuff like, "Why aren't you Weezer pilled yet?" and "I like Weezer because I'm a lesbian." And he just assumes I love Weezer. No, I've been spite playing Weezer for a long time now because his taste in music sucks. It's slowly driving him insane and I have no regrets. He just thinks I really like Weezer, and I've just been trolling him. Well, maybe you shouldn't tell your employees that they can listen to whatever they want, and then turn around and say, "But not that, and not that, and not that." I mean, how can they say Dolly Parton is too dramatic? What, is working 9 to 5 too reminiscent of what you're currently doing? Modern Swamp Witch commented, "My boss told me I could listen to anything," then proceeded to complain about all of it. Maybe the Mickey Avalon was too much, but no pop, hated my rock, etc. After a week of him complaining and saying customers didn't like it, I said fine. See, my boss likes trash rock, like Kid Rock, but our customers are old. Like, very old. Guess who gets to enjoy a whole radio station based on the Temptations and Diana Ross every dang day? Mwahaha. Our next story is what I did when a house guest made my partner cry on his birthday. This was years ago, and when I think about it, I actually feel like I showed a lot of restraint in my reaction. Maybe. You tell me. So years ago, when my partner was about to turn 25, we were living about an hour and a half from each other at the time, as he was enrolled in an undergraduate program at the time. Tiny bit of backstory, we met in high school when I joined his D&D group he was usually DM for. He was/is an amazing DM, and he's credibly dedicated, homebrew champion, so he usually runs the games people want to play and doesn't often get a chance to be a player himself. When he does get the chance, he's often privately a little disappointed because the games are rarely as robust or well-guided as the one he puts together. It's just one of those things. C'est la vie. He's private in general and very sweet-natured to people, so he would never vocalize that to anyone but me, but I know he's always looking for that special group and dynamic. Anyway, so when he was in school, he joined a D&D group up there that met once a week. And it was awesome. The DM was really great and my partner was so excited about telling me about the campaign every time I would pick him up for weekends together. Life was good for my guy and I was really happy for him. So his birthday rolls around and we decided since he'd be coming home for the weekend to host his D&D group at my place for Friday night. That way they could play and not interrupt their schedule. We made a little party out of it and I baked some key lime cupcakes for everyone. They took breaks and we all hung out a little bit. I noticed over the course of the evening that one guy, I'll call him Red, sure did seem to point out my partner's age frequently. The group was all guys 20 to 22 years old and my partner had just turned 25. I thought, jerk, but I kept quiet because my partner hates scenes or confrontations and it was his birthday. So I definitely wasn't going to escalate if I didn't have to. I went to bed when they began playing again, about 10:30 p.m. I wake up at around 1 a.m. when my partner comes to bed and just kinds of snuggles up as the big spoon, which I normally am. I hear him sniffling and breathing weird, so I realize he's crying. I ask what's wrong, what happened, and he's like, nothing. So I'm like, oh sweetheart, and he starts crying harder and is like, I don't know, I just kind of regret inviting everyone here. I was having fun, but it turned into a weird Richard measuring thing, and Red made even nastier jokes about me being a transfer student after you left, and I feel like crap. Why did I think this was a good idea? I was seeing red. I comforted him and tried to play it cool. I held him and let him cry, and to be honest, that plus the drinks helped in getting him to calm down and go to sleep quickly. I decided I needed to sleep on it and see if I still felt the need to be all Amelie about it in the morning. So I slept. When I woke, I used the bathroom, walked out, and saw this bench on the sofa asleep with his beer cans. He was the only one drinking Heinekens from last night all over my living room. And I was like, yeah, no, I still feel like revenge is necessary. You come into my home as my guest and make my boyfriend cry? You get some kind of revenge. While the guests slept, I went to the kitchen, grabbed my powdered cayenne pepper seasoning, and covered his discarded clothes with cayenne powder. I also doused his sandals. Then, and maybe this was a step too far, but I don't think I would do it again for what it's worth, I shook it onto his hair. We all went out to breakfast and he was scratching his feet and head the whole time. I still kinda wish I could have publicly embarrassed him like he did my partner, but I couldn't think of a way to do that without further embarrassing my partner. It still makes me so angry when I think about it. Grr. I feel like guys like that quickly find themselves falling out of being invited to the group stuff. I mean, hopefully most other people in that D&D group can see how they were acting. Maybe they can get together, have a small group chat and say, this guy's just not cool to have around. I mean, D&D groups are supposed to be so like close-knit, this awesome party. I mean, it's supposed to be literally like your crew you're going into battle with. You don't want to go on an adventure with some jerk you loathe. Captain Bao Bao commented, as an eternal DM and an introvert, I feel for your partner, but he should not feel ashamed of taking courses at 25. I never stopped myself. And I even had uni courses on the same bench that my father. My partner started a bachelor at 40. He should be proud. Tis but a scratch added, I'll second this. I went for a master's at 28, and now at 43, I'm taking accounting courses for my job. Most people at my job are so much younger, about half my age. Big deal. Your partner should be proud he went back to school. It's important. My dad always says that ours is the generation that can never stop learning because knowledge moves so fast that what we learned 10 years ago may be obsolete now. Our next story is, understood in French, a hostel roommate was chatting crap about me. Now he's got no ladder to his bunk. So I was getting high on a rooftop. This French guy who's in my room but I've never really liked his energy offered to play chess. I said yeah sure, but I'm really stoned so I'll suck. I did indeed suck. There was a group of French people around. My French isn't perfect, but I understood enough to know that they were chatting about the game, and he was speaking badly about me, assuming I didn't understand. I threw the rest of the game, whilst I tried to put together the sentence I needed in French. I don't have the greatest range of vocab really, but I can string a sentence together because my father was French Foreign Legion. I haven't spoken 20 years, but I was partially raised in French. I have an excellent accent. He turned to me, maybe next time, cocky and smarmy look on his face. I replied to him roughly in French, saying, but yes, it's very funny. The person of France thinks the person of England doesn't speak French, but I speak. You would think the fear on his face would have been enough, but when I get back to the room, I see his ladder has become detached from our shared bunk. Now it's electrical taped to the wall underneath the bed, completely out of sight due to sliding lockers. First time ever I won't mind when my upper bunkie is making a nightmare of getting in and out of bed. Edit update, he checked out. He admitted to an Italian guy in the room that he'd been talking crap about me, and now he must leave. Hopefully he's learned a valuable lesson about chatting crap about people. Once again, anytime a story like this comes along, I absolutely adore it. People who think they have some kind of superiority or, just this room to openly crap talk another person because they assume they don't understand that language, and then getting exposed and embarrassed and surprised they actually do have some level of shame despite being the kind of person that would talk bad about another person right in front of them. Kathy Storisi commented, love it. That reminds me of an evening spent driving German sailors around Boston, Massachusetts. I had taken 3 years of German from a native speaker in high school, and it had been just a few years. Frau M had ensured that not only were we academically capable of reading and writing to the required standard, but that we were conversationally capable as well. So, on the night in question, I was the duty driver on our sleepy little northeastern Navy base, and a German Navy plane had suffered an in-flight emergency that necessitated landing on our base. We loaded them all on our 18-passenger bus and off we rolled. I listened to them make fun of our little base. It was tiny and nothing like the master jet base they'd expected, the communities through which we drove, typical urban sprawl stuff, and our crappy beer. This predated the now ubiquitous microbrews, and they are the experts. As the ride drew to an end, I began to join the conversation. First in their laughter, and then adding commentary in German. Imagine their shock as one by one they realized that their bus driver heard and understood nearly everything. As they got off the bus, they were all very apologetic. Freak it, they were largely right anyway. That would have been about 1990. Flashing forward, it wasn't until 2017 when I actually visited Germany for 10 days, and that was when I found out just how well I'd been taught. I started out having to translate in my head before responding, but within a few days the processing was happening in German again. This next story is Obnoxious Young Musician. I managed a music store for a lot of years. We had a large guitar selection. As a result, we had a large customer base who would come in and try out the guitars. Most were really terrible musicians. The worse the player, the louder the music. The noise was unbearable sometimes. On one particular day, we had a really awful musician banging away trying out amplifiers. The sound was horrendous. The kid thought he was great and was showing off. After a while, I couldn't take it anymore. He was playing for a long period of time. I couldn't take it anymore. I went back and shut the breaker off for the amplifier section. The kid's reaction was priceless. He thought he had blown out and broken the amplifier. He got up and practically ran out of the music store. It wasn't serious revenge, but it was so satisfying. I still chuckle about it today. It's not specifically related, but this kind of reminds me of that classic where like the little sister's having a sleepover and they're breaking out the Ouija board or whatnot or talking about haunted things. And right as they say something or call out to some spirit, the older brother goes and flicks the circuit breaker off, and there's just screams that erupt from the bedroom. They really think something was going on here. They did something. Rather Warm commented, back in the 70s, my 5-year younger brother would con me into taking him over to the music store. He was a really good musician, but really just wanted to play the new guitars. I'd have to spend an hour or so trying to pry him out of the store, while he'd pick up $1,000 plus guitars and plug them into various amps. One evening, I'm chilling with the store clerk and casually ask him what happens if my brother breaks something. He laughs and tells me that I wouldn't get out of the store with my car keys and points to Bubba at the entrance. That was the last time I took my bro there. Our next story is Aggressive Law Enforcement Charity. Went to a local tractor supply center, think Walmart for farming supplies. I hate it there, but I need supplies to grab some gear. Outside, my wife and I noticed a stand for a 501c charity, Law Enforcement Against Drugs. Initially thought nothing of it, but after checking out, the solicitor for the organization, who was initially glued to his phone, decided now was a great time to solicit for a donation. I get it. Everyone wants a few bucks, but given the track record of the DARE program and the gestures to the ongoing law enforcement community controversies, I politely declined. The guy at the booth proceeded to try and guilt trip me into donating money, saying that over 100,000 kids are killed every year, and that I don't clearly care about kids. A bold strategy, given that I just came back from a humanitarian trip to South America to help impoverished people, but okay. I calmly explained that per FBI statistics, crime in the US has been decreasing over the last several decades. And while I admired the charity's mission, I did not see a reason to donate. Rather than accepting the loss, the rep doubled down that my statistic was incorrect and that the children mortality rate was increasing. Now, I will admit that I'm not in the law enforcement community, and for good reason, but I work for the federal government, and I am well aware of the real statistics regarding crime numbers, and I know that throwing arbitrary numbers out without qualifying them intentionally misrepresents data collected. Needless to say, I don't really appreciate being purposely misled, especially since such information is easily found within seconds on Google. Once I got home, I made sure to find the charity's contact information to let them know of the incident and the location. Unsurprisingly, their information is not easily obtained from their website, so I had to search it. I also made sure that the money that I wasn't planning on donating went to a different, less police-friendly organization instead. I don't know if it makes me absolutely scummy, but I try not even having eye contact with most of those charities that sit right outside the grocery doors. The worst is when the people bring their kids and make sure that their kids always say hi to whoever's coming in and coming out. So, you have to tell a 5-year-old, sorry, not interested in donating. It's just if I wanted to donate to something, I would do something with a lot of research of my own. I think just about the main thing I've donated to was the Rainforest Trust. Metastar109 wrote, a lot of those so-called law enforcement charities are scams. They may be legally set up as a charity, but only give the minimum amounts to remain legally a charity, pocketing the rest. Please check out the websites that rate charities and the percentages that are actually given to whoever they supposedly support. No legitimate charity should be trying to guilt or coerce you into donating. They are out there added, a lot of the outfits will set up a legal hustle and the cops are in on it. They'll go to a local LEO agency and then tell them something along the lines of, we'll give you $10,000 cash up front. In return, we'll be allowed to represent your LEO agency and work for whatever donations we can get over a set amount of time, and keep anything above and beyond the initial $10,000 we pay you. Many departments will happily grab the free cash as they don't really care what the public donates, as long as they can get their free cash. As a result, it's always best to say, I contribute directly. They can't accuse you of not donating this way, and no matter what excuse they give to try to get you to donate, they know they can't do anything, because donating to the same department is their whole pitch to begin with. I'd recommend donating to a rehab program or community service organization. Support the people in the community. The other guys already get enough tax dollars. Our next story is, I sent back my ex-roommate's mail. My ex-roommate moved out almost a month ago. She was terrible to me, didn't take responsibility for herself or her dog, didn't clean up, and treated me and my stuff badly. When she left the rooms she had in an awful state. I took over the apartment myself and was waiting for her to give me back the keys she had. When she didn't come back for a few hours after leaving, she was leaving randomly throughout the day, I messaged her asking where she was. She told me that she was done and she gave the keys to management earlier. When I told her she was supposed to give them to me as I was keeping the apartment, it wasn't a total move out. She basically told me to deal with it and to stop harassing her. The annoying thing about it was that the office is only open during working hours and I obviously have a job. I had to go out of my way to go and get the keys when I shouldn't have had to. Anyways, to the actual petty revenge, 2 letters for her had shown up since she moved out, which most likely included checks and important information from the government. Since she didn't have the decency to just give me the keys and not make my life easier, plus how awful of a person and a roommate she was, I'm not going to go out of my way to help her. I went to the post office, stood in line for a while, and returned the mail via return to sender because she doesn't live at my address anymore. She'll still get her mail with her checks and information, but it'll take a lot longer. She'll just have to deal with it, I guess. Maybe she should talk to the post office if she wants the mail back. Yes, that's a reference of what she said to me. Fun little edit/update and more revenge. I sent out the damage deposit to her. She isn't getting anything back, it was between us, and CC'd the side manager of our apartment. She responded with a really weak comment basically saying I'm petty. Then she asked for the utilities information from the past 2 months. I'm not going to give it to her since I did not charge her for it. She wants the information to send to her social worker to get reimbursed for the utilities. I plan on restating that yes, she caused this on her own and her submitting a claim for utilities would be fraudulent as she wasn't charged for them. If she wants the utility statements, she can try and get them herself. I refuse to help her get money she isn't owed. Best, my favorite sign-off. I think OP handled this literally the best way they could. It's not like they can do anything in return, and if they do, it'll probably just cost them more money than it ever was actually worth. What are they gonna do, get the police involved for returning mail that literally is from somebody that doesn't live at that address? Darth Corinna commented, legally petty. She can't complain you messed with her mail. At least you didn't toss it all in the bin. OP responded saying, I even took a photo of the letters on the post office counter before I left just for this reason. I didn't want her to try and say I did something with the letters. Our next story is, city wouldn't pick up my yard waste, so I sure showed them. A few weeks ago, I did some trimming on the large bushes and trees in my yard, cutting the branches that were hanging a bit low or a bit too far out from the landscaping. I ended up with 2 large yard waste bins full of branches, which I put out by the curb for pickup. The next day, when I came home from work, the city had picked up the yard waste for everyone else in my neighborhood, just not mine. I couldn't figure out why. The bins were full but not overflowing, and they weren't overly heavy, as I was able to easily carry them out to the curb. The branches were between 3 to 4 feet long at the most, and I'd left similar bins out before and they always got picked up without issue. I even checked online to see if I'd inadvertently violated any sort of restrictions, but didn't see anything that could explain it. I sort of wish the pickup people would have left a note telling me what the problem was. I was kind of annoyed, but not enough to call and complain about it, so I emptied out the bins in a discreet area to the side of my house. And for the past few weeks, every pickup day, whenever I wheel the regular garbage bin out to the curb, I've also been putting one of the yard waste bins out, with exactly 1 branch in it. And they've been taking it each time, which means they have to stop the truck at my curb and someone has to get out, check the bin, see that the only thing in it is 1 branch, and then take the 1 branch. This is slowly, in tiny increments, creating more work for them than if they'd just empty the 2 full bins to begin with. I intend to keep doing it until they acknowledge it, or I actually need the bins for yard work again, or until I get bored, which probably isn't going to happen. I sympathize so much with OP on this because I live in a place that has a large tree nearby, and with a large tree comes a lot of branches, sticks, leaves, things like that, so oftentimes there are weeks where I have to go out and gather a bunch of things. And when the garbage people come by that also are supposed to collect the yard waste, it's like hit or miss whether they'll actually even take it. It's like a 50-50% chance whether they'll just drive on by or have a, I guess I'll pick it up this time, kind of generosity. I'm just an old guy commented. What has actually, I assume, happened is that when you originally filed your green waste bin, a branch was wedged in and held back the emptying process. It's also possible that the driver doesn't shake the bin so that things will fall out. Pure laziness on his part. I have had grass solidify and this has happened to me for 3 weeks running. I had to actually get a shovel and break things up. When you put 1 branch, he doesn't actually get off to look, it just empties as normal. Trust me, I'm a former garbage man. He's not getting off his truck. Our next story is, went out with someone my ex-husband admired. I was with my crappy husband for 10 years. We had a successful band together and toured all over for years. He asked an artist who had opened up for another certain famous artist in our genre to give us a good word and help us open for him on his next tour. My husband wanted that opportunity so bad as he thought the artist was cool as freak. The friend ended up opening for the cool as freak artist, so we didn't get the tour. He never knew we tried though and didn't know who we were as our name never got past the friend my husband had asked to help us. We divorced a few years later and I started dating again. My husband was a piece of crap. One of, if not the, worst people I've ever met in my life as far as how he takes advantage of people and freaks people over. One tiny example is he pawned my wedding dress and the 5 heirloom rings from my grandmothers and great-grandmothers that were passed down to me. He's done even worse than that, but I won't get into it right now for the sake of getting to the point. Anyway, the cool as freak musician came into my town and had been on Bumble and matched with me. He didn't know that I was part of the band from before. He took me out for a weekend, wined and dined me every day, drove me to the festival he was performing at all weekend, bought me gifts, spent the whole weekend with me and asked me to go with him on a resort vacation. Yes, I made sure my craphead ex-husband found out about all of that. I told him how amazing he was when he performed, how nice he was, what a great weekend we had together, how he's even greater in person, blah blah blah. It was so satisfying. Edit, okay guys, for those of you who are giving me crap about how I should have left him earlier and how I'm crappy, read on. I wasn't gonna get into all this, but it's fair enough to give me crap without having the backstory. And yes, I'm sure he does have his own version of how it all went down. But the facts are the facts in this scenario, and I never did anything to harm him physically, financially, emotionally, reputation-wise, even when he did the worst to me. Here's some context. I grew up Christian, where in my circle it was normal or expected to get married young. I married him at 19 and he was 7 years older. I mention the Christian thing because I was taught that you trust your husband as the authority and that divorce was bad. Through the years, he was extremely abusive emotionally, financially, verbally, physically, and it grew and grew each year. I stayed because I thought it was the right thing to do. I mentioned the thing about the selling of the heirlooms and dress because I was keeping it light versus bringing up a bunch of dark examples. I was very much isolated from my family and any objective reasoning until the end, where I was a shell of myself and couldn't go on anymore like that because I was SH, severely depressed and unable to cope with life. After that, I made the brave decision to reach out to my family for support as I got away from him and filed for divorce. He fought it on all the way just to be cruel. Our daughter died and he stole all of the money from the GoFundMe that was raised in her name, tens of thousands of dollars, closed our joint bank account 2 days after she died, opened a new one in his name with a different bank, and got the person who set up the GoFundMe to link it to his new bank account. He sent a bank statement to me with my account saying $0.00 as a final freak you. The things he did to me over the years are too much to even say. He abused me and my daughter, and I tried everything to keep our marriage together. Counseling for myself when he wouldn't go. I read all the marriage books. I did everything I thought a good wife should do to support and love him, and it didn't make a difference. I could have done a lot to ruin his reputation, but I've always been the bigger person. So for freak's sakes, I'm gonna proudly have this one. Well, after hearing all of that, I certainly am not gonna be the kind of person to challenge OP on any of this. It's just really kind of funny that the person this ex-husband admired so much ends up being that perfect, awesome dude that sweeps in and sweeps you off your feet away from him. I mean, I guess if exactly that happens to everybody, I guess I'm waiting for like Gerard Way to come sweep me off my feet. But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. Now, if you want to hear another absolutely awesome revenge story, check out that video on the left. Or if you missed my latest video, check out that video on the right. That said, I'll see you all next time with some more stories.